Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the iGaming Next podcast. Jesper Svensson, CEO of Betsson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me again, Pierre. It's nice to be back.
Yes, it's nice to have you back as well, Jesper. This is the first episode with a recurring guest, and who better than a good friend and a fantastic person that you are, Jesper. It was an absolute pleasure to invite you back here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored, Pierre. That's good.
Yes, so am I. Jesper, so today, I mentioned now in the before we started this podcast that yesterday I was like cleaning my apartment, and what better opportunity to listen to podcasts than when you clean your apartment. So I actually re-listened to our podcast yesterday to refresh my mind. This happened back in May, and we made some claims and some. And we talked a lot about the different points that were related to what was happening during Corona, and made some predictions and so forth. I wanted to kind of refresh myself and see the predictions that we made. So that's one interesting thing that I would like to bring up a little bit later in the podcast today. But I actually want to start with something different, Jesper. And I want to jump straight into the fire today with you, actually. So Jesper, you've been at Betsson now for about 8 years time or so, and you've obviously experienced a lot of things in this organization. Yes, I can imagine. And I would like to start by asking you, what was the best and the worst day that you've had as a professional at Betsson so far?
Oh wow!
Yes.
That's a big question. For matter of fact, I know it's easy for me to point out actually the worst day to begin with that, because I remember when I became the operational CEO in 2017, and we were going through the whole organization of basically how we can make our operations more efficient. And that was a big exercise, and the outcome of that exercise was also that we had to do redundancies. We were not structured in a good enough way. So there was that day when we announced redundancies of several hundred colleagues that were let go, and that was a very tough day. I mean, that's the worst, by far the worst, the worst day, because it's never fun to come with that type of news to anyone working in the organization, and in particular here in Malta, it was quite big news. The media started to think that this was end of gaming, Betsson leaving, and it stirred up things a bit. So it was quite a day in that sense. But I also remember that time when those things were happening and our performance was not as good as it could or should be. If I go into the better side of things, I have to say, maybe at the end of that year, I would say the end of that year, let's say the last day of that year, if we look at early 2018, late 2018, we delivered a fantastic Q4. Today, it's still the highest EBIT we had in any quarter, and that also shows how it was in the beginning of the year and where we ended the year, and the impact of all those changes we did. I mean, you know me, Pierre, in the sense that I'm a big sports fan. Liverpool is my team, and when I look back at that year, it's almost like Istanbul. You know, you feel in the beginning of the year, you feel you're down 3-0, but you don't give up. You believe in what you're doing, and the last day of 2018, 31st December, that's when Dudek saves the penalty, and Liverpool won the title. And it was such a comeback that year. So I think from the beginning to the end, that's probably where I had my my worst and my best day. I'm fortunate to think that actually most days are really great days here at Betsson. So so that's good, but certain days stand out more than others, of course.
Yeah, of course. What a wonderful analogy, by the way. I like it. So I mean, when you have to take that decision to make all these redundancies, like as a leader, how do you approach something like that? You know, because you're in effect changing people's lives. You know, like as a leader, what approach do you take to something like this to ease on that process?
Yeah, I think as a leader, you have the responsibility to do the changes. You know, if you don't do that, you're not delivering on what you are supposed to do. So it's a very, very hard task to do that when it involves other people's life. But I think when you come to the conclusion that this is the best for the company and for the future performance of the company, and you go through with it, you also need to think of what you safeguard. You know, in the bigger picture, you need to safeguard the great organization in this, and you need to think about the greater good in that. Then when it happens, you have to do it in the most human and fair way possible. And you never know how the reactions will be, because I mean, we are all individuals, we can all react differently, but you need to obviously have the ambition to do it in a fair way, in a decent way. So and I mean, it's hard to say with empathy, because it's a tough thing to do, but you're dealing with people, and you need to respect the situation and try to just make the best out of it.
Yeah, of course, it's a situation you really don't want to be in as a leader in the first place, but when you tackle it as this, it shows your colors as a leader, kind of how you react to those situations. I saw a podcast actually with it was the CEO of Airbnb. Okay, so obviously Airbnb heavily affected by Corona and the outfall of that. You know, they lose most of the revenue of the entire year, and they had to do quite significant redundancies as well within the organization, and they put together a lot of different points to kind of ease to like cushion the blow for the employees in a lot of ways. And one of the things they did was they created this program to help rehire their staff, right? So I think there was a program that they created a platform basically with all the people that were made redundant listed who they were, what their specialities were, and then actively were trying to help them into their next career move, basically. And they were saying that, you know, they were saying that even though we are kind of helping our competitors in a way to find their talent, which, you know, is quite controversial, they said that they wanted to make sure that they do things the human way, not only just to show internally, you know, that they genuinely care about, you know, the staff and things like that, but also once they come out of this crisis, that the ex-employees sees them as a positive company to potentially return to eventually.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty cool, actually. So kind of keep,
makes a lot of sense to do it like that, because you still need, you know, even if someone leaves the company, you want those people to speak well about the company, because that in itself also attract talent in the long run to the company, right? So, but it's a fine line, because in the end you just have to do it, and the reality is that people will lose their jobs, but as much as you can do to mitigate helps. And in the case of Betsson a few years back, there was I mean, this was pre-COVID, if you like, and it was still the industry was doing well, and the majority of the people that were let go were in Malta, and they were quite quickly rehired in other companies. So the industry was in a healthy place. Betsson was not in that great place too, which also it's good to know when that happens, that most of the people quite quickly got something else.
Yeah, and that's the wonderful thing with this industry, right? Is at least up until at that time, it was really the employees market. It was so easy, you work in one company on Monday and then another company on Tuesday, pretty much. If you want, like, the employees have had a lot of options at that time. It feels like that has changed a little bit now recently. This exponential growth that we've seen within the industry during that time has kind of stopped a little bit. No, or how do you see things?
Yeah, to some degree it has, but I mean, it's still a growth industry. It's a massive growth industry, and if you look at this year, the digital side of gaming is growing much faster than it was before. For every year going forward, both land-based and digital is expecting to grow. Obviously, post pandemic time, right? But I think to work in an industry like this, in a time like this, makes us very fortunate, because we are not affected in the same way as many other industries. And now, speaking on the digital side now, of course, the land-based is significantly impacted, but digital gaming has been doing really well and shown sustainability. And that is also why companies like us, we are recruiting, we are expanding, we're opening new markets and so forth. So it's still a very good industry to be in, and I expect this to continue for many years.
Robin Eric Reed, the founder of GIG, he coined a quite funny expression after COVID that solidifies the strength of the iGaming industry. He said, that after COVID happened, the stock market crashed, of course, and then we've seen some organizations bouncing back really well, the iGaming industry being one of them, of course. And Robin said that, investors are now looking for pandemic-proof investment. Right. And another thing that investors are looking for are recession-proof investments. And the iGaming industry is both.
Yeah.
As one of the few industries, both pandemic-proof and recession-proof.
No, it's a great observation, right? Because I think when you look at most of the companies, most are growing, both top line and many also bottom line, and it shows real strength in a very, very tough time globally.
Yeah, it's true. So on that note, now, speaking about shareholder value and things like that, Jesper, like as the CEO of a listed company, what do you say is the most important task that you have? Is it, the traditional way of seeing a CEO of a listed company is that they are supposed to drive shareholder value? Would you say that is the most important part of your job?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, just a small definition point. I mean, Pontus is the CEO of the listed company. Actually, I'm the CEO of Betsson Group or Betsson Operations. So we have slightly different roles from that point of view. But obviously, we work together. We speak every day, and we push things forward jointly. But I think as a listed company, obviously you have to deliver shareholder value. There is no otherwise. You should not be listed, and to begin with, you should not probably be a company, because you have to deliver value in what you do, whatever way that looks. But I think sometimes it's hard when you see certain industries, because we have also industry, let's call it industry index. The industry today is more regulated, it's more scrutinized than it has ever been. And it's a very, very serious industry. I mean, we are scrutinized as banks. I mean, a company like ours, we have 12 different jurisdictions that always do an audit on us and so forth. So I think people don't really realize how under the loop we are all the time. At the same time, the valuations of this industry has been going down. 5 years ago, it was less scrutiny in operations and still more investments and higher valuation of the companies. And this doesn't really, I would say, make sense. And that is an opportunity for both us as an industry and I believe investors as well to come in at this time and be part of the future growth journey.
Yeah, because it's interesting what you're saying, because Betsson's all-time high, you posted all-time highs on the stock market valuations in like 2015, but like you're saying, you are trending towards an all-time high 2020 in terms of EBIT and things like that. So then you ask yourself, why is that? And it seems that the answer is that it was because of ESG matters done predominantly, that a lot of investors are looking at the iGaming industry today with a bit hesitation.
Yeah, I believe some funds and so forth has decided to leave the industry, right? And again, if you look at what it was a different time five years ago, but the gaming companies today are better run today than they have ever been, right? So a lot of the concerns have been addressed. But then I also think, I mean, there are different type of investors, and you look at companies like ours, we have shown profitability for more than 10 years and a very steady stream of income and so forth. And I think going forward as well in a tougher climate, people will turn into companies like ours, because in my world this is really sustainable.
Yeah,
if you look at it.
Yeah, of course it's sustainable, and it seems a little bit that the industry have almost committed itself now to solve the problem of player protection. And I hear a lot of voices being echoed that if you solve player protection, you secure the future for the entire iGaming industry. And obviously, it seems to be a little bit of a delay in society, what society perceives the industry to be and what it actually is. Okay, so all the good things that are happening now within the industry, that you're saying, like you're saying, you are scrutinized as a bank, but on the AML side of things and the KYC side of things, it's just incredibly well maintained, so to say, and it seems to me that it's just either it's a matter of time before the industry is perceived better, or it's the industry that needs to communicate it better. What do you think?
I could be a little bit of both, actually, because many times when we open the doors to show what we are doing, most people that see that goes like, wow, we didn't know that it was on this level. And I mean, we have 100+ people working with payments, AML, responsible gaming, and so forth. It's a big operation only, I say, in that area. Big compliance team, and a lot of investment goes into this, and we have a very good view of the customers as well, and we intervene whenever we see that there is something that looks worrisome, so to speak. So I think we could be better in communicating those things, but it's hard also sometimes to change the full perception. We need to also stand strong in this and just keep doing what we believe in, basically. And I don't feel we need to excuse ourselves at all, actually.
Yeah, no, definitely. So something we talked about last time, Jesper, was in the podcast back in May, was the industry's kind of that the need of self-regulation. We talked about basically, that to kind of go above and beyond of where the regulation is to not give it up in the hands of the people eventually who might not be that competent, let's say. So if the iGaming industry stays ahead of the curve when it comes to player protection and so forth, before it's being tackled on political level by people who maybe aren't as competent as we are within the industry, do you see that as a priority as well, or are you more focused to communicating with the regulator and kind of staying within the framework that they give you?
Yeah, I would say it depends. I mean, we try to work proactively with the regulators that are allowing us to do that. There are some regulators are willing to have a conversation, some are not. There's a lot of politics going into this, and fortunately, it's more politics than science in certain countries. But I think it's also with a product like ours, gaming. I think we also know that there will be problem players. It's the same as when you speak about addiction overall. Even if you mention other thing, I mean, it's quite easy to look at the alcohol industry, for example, or even fast food or whatever it can be. Addiction can come in many different forms, and of course that will never fully disappear, but we need to do everything we can to limit it. And that is what we do, and I think that is what the regulators are aiming for, but sometimes they get a bit clouded by the politics and not so much about what is the actual facts in this.
Yeah, I would. So I hear this being echoed sometimes. We speak about regulation and how far should it go, and sometimes I hear this echoing that when you go to a nightclub, there isn't any regulation within that nightclub how much you can drink. I'm not actually a big fan of that about that comparison, because in the end of the day, alcohol is damaging your body physically, and I see it as something different. But what, me and my friend, a friend of mine, we spoke about this the other day, which is that we see a lot of parallels between addictive gambling behavior and addictive social media use. Actually, it's another parallel that we can draw to, which is, I find this very interesting, because clearly there is a problem within society of social media use. Okay, we can see it especially in the younger generation growing up, overusing and completely addicted to social media. And I am myself addicted. I can honestly say as well, it would be very difficult for me to step away from my cell phone. But that's more an addiction that I think is more comparable to gambling. And that's also an industry which is not regulated whatsoever yet, which I find interesting. I think there is a lot of parallels to be drawn there. And in the future, when I think it's just a matter of time before social media becomes regulated too, because it's obviously a damaging part of society now, more or less. I think that the experts in looking into regulation to social media are the compliance team within gaming.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there is, again, I mean, it's easy to think when you speak about problem gambling that the big problem is financial, which in most cases, of course, is that. But it is also how much time do you spend doing something, right? Which is the same with social media and so forth. So I think there are probably some good parallels in between that. But I would say when you look at the totality of the people that are using those products, they are using, in particular in gaming, they are using it in a healthy way, in the entertaining way that it is, and that is something that we also need to lift up and say most people are doing this in the way it is intended to be, and here is, I think, to some degree perhaps more parallel with alcohol, to be fair, than with social media, in the sense that most people are using alcohol in an okay way, and then there is a problematic way as well, though. So but I think from an industry point of view, of course, we have a responsibility to follow the regulations, but not just that in itself. We have to do what we can in order to prevent and protect the ones who need it.
Yeah, of course. And I think that leads into the next topic, which is if we sail over the Atlantic, we come down into the US market, which is obviously something that everyone's talking about right now. The market is extremely hyped on the stock market right now. I mentioned it a couple of times in the podcast, but interesting for you to know it as well, Jesper, that a company like DraftKings at the moment, they drove in something like $150 million revenue in Q3, and they spent more than that in marketing alone. Okay, but the company is valued to something like 17 billion on the stock market. Like, that's how much the market believes in the US, in the future of the US gambling market. So that also, it's also, I mean, it's insane. Right? At the same time, William Hill, they posted like $500 million revenue, and they were sold for like 3.7 billion US dollars, right? Like, that's how big the difference is between how the investor sees the future of these markets, right? How does Betsson fit into the US market? And secondly, then we speak about self-regulation and all these things. US is a traditional market which puts a lot of faith into the companies self-regulating. This is very like traditional, like Republican way of thinking and things like that. So how do you see that market also from a responsible gaming point of view? How far ahead should you be in the thinking in this market? And is it even possible, when everyone is doing whatever they want?
John, I mean, yes, I think first on your first comments in regards to valuation and so forth, I think what you see in the US, in many other industries, and if you look at the last year here, there is the winner take it all mentality in many ways, right? You see Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, gigantic companies, and that could be a little bit the mentality that when investors believe someone is going to take the market leading role, that money pours into that. I think what we have seen historically in our industry is that we are quite diverse when it comes to how many operators it is. Of course, most countries have some clear market leaders, but there is also then a lot of room for many companies to gain traction, in particular if you have a good product. So it's a great opportunity with the US. I think another good thing with the US, obviously you have to, responsible gaming will be high on the agenda in every country going forward, including the US. It may look a little bit different over there than what it does in Europe, because, I mean, the US is quite liberal. They are not really in the way of putting limits on their people. That's not very appreciated in that sense. And this is obviously my subjective thinking here, right? My own opinion. I don't think we will see so much deposit limits and so forth in the US. It's not really part of the way of thinking over there, because it's also the freedom of the people that they to do whatever they want, in particular with their money. If you tell someone over there from a government, federal point of view, a state point of view to the US, what you're allowed to do or not with your money, that you're pushing it in that sense, while perhaps it's more accepted in some countries in Europe. So it's a different mentality. That said, you still need to take your responsibility as an operator, of course, and make sure that you have all the tools available for the customers who needs it, and follow the same signs and interventions and so forth that you would do in relation to problem gambling in any other market.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I guess it's a challenge in the US because in Europe we have quite strong industry organizations, right? In most major markets, which kind of creates a roundtable discussion between the operators to agree on the approach to take in the market, right? I mean, Betsson, you guys were very proactive when Corona came, for example, in how you avoided being too aggressive in your marketing and things like that, and maybe that is what the US needs as well to be able to take responsible gaming seriously in not only from Betsson's point of view, but from all the major players, kind of thing. Yeah. So that doesn't really exist in the US as it stands, right? Like a representation of the iGaming industry, or?
No, not fully in the shape or form as we see here. I mean, it's still very early days in the US, right? And a state by state approach as well, and it differs in some cases as much between the states in the US as it does between the countries in Europe. So we speak about US, but we have to speak about it in the same way as Europe, actually, because it really is a state-by-state exercise.
Yeah. So on that note, I have a question for you that we'll see what you give for answer for. But okay, so in a previous podcast with Rika Wikström of Internet Vikings, we speculated that land-based casinos in the US are looking to diversify their portfolios now, right? So we see a lot of partnerships between land-based casinos and online casinos to start their online operations. Obviously, Caesars bought William Hill as a way for them to create this digital arm and basically pandemic-proof the organization, like we spoke about earlier. And that led us to speculate that we might see a lot more land-based casinos making acquisitions towards the traditional European market, perhaps to just buy competence. They wouldn't be necessarily interested in operating the European side of the business, which is also what we're seeing with the William Hill acquisition, right? CSS aren't interested in the European side of William Hill. They want to grow in the US. So that led us to speculate again that why wouldn't established land-based casinos acquire medium-sized European operators? And we made a deal that so I made a claim that if we don't see any such M&A activity in the next coming 3 years, I promise to eat my sock. So what do you think, Jesper, about that type of strategy from land-based casinos in the US? Do you see that as relevant? And I'm not at all making any insinuations here, okay?
No, and neither am I. But I mean, you just look at the dynamics of the market. The likelihood, of course, is like that. I mean, America is big money, and in many cases, those the land-based casinos there are massive. And not just that. I mean, you even have not just the traditional Las Vegas casinos. You have the native Americans as well that are running astonishingly big operations in many states and so forth. So I think European operators that are digital operators that potentially have technology and so forth will have a level of attractiveness. But it's not just that you sit and you only know land-based and think, how are we going to do this? Let's go and buy a European company. I think there will be many that are starting with just trying to go online and then sign up, a sports book, a PAM as they call, player account management, a platform, and grow that way as well. So I think for sure in the next 3 years, would an American company buy a European company? That I think your bet is safe. I have to say. But
I
can all
think
speculate.
I think we specifically said something like Kindred, Leo Vegas, or Betsson Group.
Yeah.
Or in that range. But
the thing is with all the companies you're mentioning here, they all you mentioned 3 listed companies, and the nature of a listed company is that you're always for sale. I mean, any company on any stock market is for sale. It's just about them if the shareholders will agree on the price or not. And I think most companies, if those things will happen, will look at do they think this is a good transaction for the shareholders or is it not any particular over time. I think there is to some degree a challenge at this point today, because many companies are having good cash flows, good margins, increasing revenues, but it's not fully reflected in the share price.
Exactly.
So
that's the thing.
For many to sell at this point, I believe the premiums would be quite high as well. But I mean, I and by no means I only subjectively speculate here, and that has nothing to do with my current position or anything. Just to be clear on that.
Of course, clear on that. But it's fun to speculate about what they think from an outside point of view. So
yes, I can do it. I'm allowed to do it in general terms at least. So that was pretty general.
yes, I think so as well. Yes, well, I will keep an eye on this, obviously, for my personal interest of not having to eat my stock. So I will hope for the best in this regard. But let's stay in the US for a little bit, because I want to ask you as well. Obviously, obviously Betsson is going into the US, and you are doing it on a state by state level. I think you are starting by exploring Colorado, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yeah.
But is it both on the B2B and on B2C side? Because I know you have your proprietary sports books that you're pushing, but are you also pushing B2C?
Yeah, we start out B2C in Colorado, but overall we believe that B2B is a good way for us in the US. So we're aiming to supply sportsbook technology over there. The first thing though is, of course, we need to be live in the US in order to showcase our product for US operations that are interested in this. So that's what we're working with, and we aim to go live next year.
Yeah, cool. And so what are your thoughts on Betsson also making a push in the US on the B2C side? What does it take to make a dent in that market, even on a state level?
It depends. Again, it's so different state by state. If there is some states, when you speak about market access, there are very few skins available, as you say. So if you get an opportunity where there is a limit of how many operators there can be, that can still represent a good opportunity. If you have a very good product, then there is always a good opportunity, regardless though. So I think our philosophy is long term in Betsson, has always been. You know, you have been speaking to Pontus as well, and you know that it's really to think about the long term side, which is a great way for this organization, and I believe that if you look the long term for the US, it will be a very big market, but you need to be both a bit cautious in some areas, so you don't overspend. You need to get the right deal, the right access, and so forth. And in the long run, that can be quite profitable. But for the next coming years, it's not. There will be growth, but there will not be a lot of profits from that.
Exactly.
It will always take. You need to reach a certain market share in order to become profitable.
Yeah, exactly, and I guess that's the $1 million kind of question that the operators have to ask themselves, because we've seen the likes of GIG, for example, arguably overinvesting in the US too early, and not having the best results from taking a stab in that market. And I guess like committing yourself as an operator to go into US, you have to be prepared, I guess, that it is a long term game, right? And that's the challenge, right? Because it would take a lot of resources during a long time for uncertain amount of profits back, because we don't know how big. I mean, everyone knows that the market will be big, but we don't know how big it's going to be.
No, but it will be very big. It will be big, and it already is big on the offshore side. I mean, gaming is not new to Americans. Online gaming, for many it is, but I mean, there's still an offshore operations there. So that is changing now, of course. So now it's different type of marketing and so forth. So over time it will be very, very big. And of course, you could get really good traction quite early in certain states as well. But if you look overall for the US, which is 50 states or so, then that will take a long time until all that is up and running and someone is having a massive piece of all of that. On the other hand, if you become big in a state like, let's say, California, Texas, or Florida, you're big. It's the same. It's the same if you are big in a big European country, UK, Germany, or Italy. You're big.
Yes, exactly.
The same goes for California.
The fourth biggest economy in the world, or something like that. California on its own.
Indeed. So it is. It is a very exciting opportunity. But I would also say we should not forget about other opportunities. I mean, we are looking at Latin America now. We are active in several countries. Last week we launched in Kenya, in Africa.
Yes, with BetSafe brand, right?
BetSafe, yes.
Yeah, BetSafe.
So there's a lot of opportunities also in those markets, though. So it's happening in many places right now. Quite quick progress. So we're trying to focus on geographical expansion and be a leading player in many areas.
Yeah, and it's an excellent intro into the next subject, which is geographical expansion versus localized focus. So as an organization, just in any industry that you operate in, some organizations, they like to pinpoint on a certain market and become experts in that market, right? And I guess traditionally in iGaming, we've seen a lot of organizations doing that, especially Scandinavian-focused operators and so forth. Like Betsson used to be, for example. And now, going through this regulatory kind of time where more and more markets gets more and more restricted, and the uncertainty within these regulations makes it really difficult to be specialized in local markets, right? But I want to ask you, when you try to penetrate that many different markets in that many different regions, isn't it a risk that you also spread yourself too thin and lose that kind of edge?
I mean, there is always a risk with geographical expansion, but I think the way we view it is like we are planting a lot of different seeds across countries, and we know that all of them will perhaps not be super successful, but many of them, the ones that will have a significant impact. I think overall, one of the strengths with Betsson is that we are a diverse company, although at this point I would say European diverse, but we're now moving into to a lot of different continents here. And when you have so many different countries that builds up to your overall results, you are less dependent also on one single country, and that in times like this, I think, it's also actually a strength for us at least, and that diversity it's almost taking away some risk, if you like. So we become we can go through a lot of changes in many places, but still keep up solid numbers.
Yeah, exactly, and it seems that the whole industry is moving that direction in general. This time where operators are focused on single markets is kind of over in a way.
It is. No, but on the other hand, I mean, of course, we would be happy to be big in all the markets that we are in as well, right? But I think a good healthy mix is important, and if you look globally as well, just for this, making a point, in the next 5 years from today, locally regulated markets will still not is not expected to be bigger than what we call point of supply regulated markets. So there is a lot of local regulations happening both in Europe, in the US and so forth, but globally overall, 5 years from today, the majority would still be of online gaming would still be point of supply.
But it's just a matter of time before they become regulated, I would assume.
No, it is not like that. I think there is a wrong impression in that. We have looked quite extensively at this, and in the last years we have seen that it has really grown fast. Locally regulations have been growing fast, but that is expected to slow down on a global basis.
Why is that? Because that would go against logic. It feels like.
Well, it depends. I wouldn't say that all of those markets are addressable for us anyway. I mean, we obviously you have to have the right structure, legal arguments, or whatever you like to call it, in order to operate in that. But it's just what the world looks like, and that is that there will be a slowdown of local regulation.
Okay. Well, what do you feel? Compared to what we've seen. Yeah, compared to what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And what would you say are like the most exciting markets? If you could, it's like Jesper Svensson always says that the only people who can predict the future are the stock analysts, and they fail as well, obviously, all the time. But if you would, what are some of your markets that you're most excited for when we go into the next couple of years?
I'm if I look at right now, then I would say, because we have already started, I'm very happy to see the traction we're having in Latin America. That's very exciting. They're big markets there. They love sports, and great opportunity. But that is happening, and then of course, I mean, we launched in Africa last week, so that's also high on the agenda, and that's exciting. And I think I don't want to single out a specific country over the other ones, but the traction we're having for the next few years, I believe, will probably Latin America will be bigger for us as well. And maybe we should speak in the future another time as well and see how it has been going in Africa. And then, I mean, we are still we haven't launched yet in the US, but 3 years from today, I both hope and believe that we have made significant progress there as well.
Yeah. So I'm trying to drag these predictions out of you, because next time we do a podcast together, then we will see the results of these predictions. So we are already at time here, but if it's okay with you, I have one last subject that I'd like to talk to you.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, good. I like it. Which is something we spoke about in the last podcast. So again, our last podcast was in May, just when the outbreak was at its peak with lockdowns and all these things. And we spoke about the phenomena of working from home at that time.
Yeah.
Because when we spoke last time, this was just at the time when we started to realize that the productivity levels were looking good, they were looking healthy, people were able to work from home, it didn't affect the productivity levels and so forth. And here we are, so like 7 months later, and we are still in the same situation. I don't think that we would have thought that we were at that time when we did that podcast, but still here we are at the moment. And in the last podcast, I asked you basically, what do you think? Do you think that working from home is the future for a modern tech company? And to solidify that question, we ran a poll in the online event that we organized last week, which was exactly that question. Do you think that working from home is the future for any modern tech company? And 95% voted yes. So I would like to ask you as a follow-up, because last time you weren't sure, we were in the beginning. So I would like to hear your opinion now, because as a large organization, this is a challenge, right?
Yeah, it is. And you know what? I may still be of the 5% group on this a bit, because and let me explain why. I believe the office has an important place for people to physically come together, have discussions, ideas, get to know each other, and that interaction will lead to something positive. So I don't think we can ever get that to the highest level digitally, and even imagine you're recruiting people into a company, you're onboarding people in this, they're sitting working from home, they never met a colleague. You don't the social aspect, we are social people. Most people need some sort of social interaction, and I think that the workplace gives you that. But so the office will still have a place, I believe, but naturally you need to look at flexibility in how you approach this. I think the traditional, you have to go exactly 9 to 5 every single day. No, times like this are really challenging the old structure in that, and I'm more believing in some sort of hybrid model. And just allow for a little bit for both sides to happen.
Yeah, it's fair enough, because just next door here to where I'm sitting now in our office, wall to wall, we have RakeTech that just moved in a couple of months, like 1.5 months ago. They moved in here wall to wall to us basically, and so quite interesting. They have around 90 employees in Malta, and the office space that they took now only has place for about 25. Okay, so quite interesting, right? And so they are decreasing their foot space, and they are changing the organization to a remote first organization, where the office is where you meet each other. It's a space to socialize, and just like what you mentioned, it's a kind of a hybrid model where you have the space to meet each other, and it is there to get to know each other. But at the same time, you are also allowed to work from home. And what Raketech are doing as well is they see this as an opportunity to be able to hire global talent. Okay, so it's a little bit give and take, I would think, right? Because yes, on the one hand, like you were saying, you don't have the same personal connection to your employees, and I tend to be somewhere in the middle about this. I think creating culture in our organization is really important. Okay, and you don't have the same, like, regardless what you do, you can do Slack channels, you can, you know what I mean, you can do yoga via Zoom or whatever, but it's obviously never not going to be the same as meeting in person.
No.
But they value the fact that they are able to attract global talent so much that they are open to kind of work towards that type of setup where they prioritize that. Is that something that you have thought as well about, or do you prefer to?
It depends. I think. I mean, if you there's so many things to think about in that, because if you have people in 100 different countries, there are 100 different employee laws and way to set up that in the rightful way. But I think we will all look at a more flexible model, more openness to ideas how this will exactly look like. It's still a little bit early to say. Global talent is key for everyone, but I think it's a little bit simplified to say that it would be easier to just open up for that, and then you get the results that you want. I don't believe in that. There could be certain areas of the organization that is a little bit more task driven, if you like. This is the specific task, you do that, it's easy to measure output from and so forth. But all in all, I think you will suffer culture wise if you don't keep an office space or a good structure around that. And many people in a time like this that's very, very challenging end up in isolation. It can be that you work and live in a country where you don't have your family and perhaps not all your friends either, and you then sit at home all the time, and that's not a healthy setup either, though. So a hybrid model is current best thinking.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, like, this social and mental health aspect too, and it's something we talked about this in our organization. Should we become a remote first organization too? And one thing that we talked about too is just like what you mentioned now, which is the fact that as an adult, where you make your friends these days is mainly at your workplace. Like, many adults don't have a good social setup outside of work, in the sense that they don't particularly play, for example, team sports, which is another way to meet friends, or gather in those type of situations where you meet other people. Most people meet their friends at work. So that is definitely an argument as well why you really want to keep your staff together.
I agree. I agree.
It'll be interesting to see when we do the next podcast. We'll do an update and see if we think differently at that time. But for now, let's see how it goes.
We shall see.
Jesper, it's been an absolute pleasure today. One last question I have for you, which is, what operator are you most? Sorry, I pushed it one more time. What operator are you impressed by in 2020?
Impressed by in 2020.
Last time we had a little bit similar question, if you remember, which was which operator you think?
You know what? I will be a little bit cheeky on this one. I am impressed by Betsson. Sorry to say it. I mean,
Oh my
I know
God.
that was not the
Oh,
one
no.
you were looking for, but I'm when I just think spontaneously, I think we have done such a great job. But many others have done as well. So who has really been standing out?
I would say like Leo Vegas as well posted a really good quarterly report now in Q3. Like there's positivity all around in this industry again.
Listen, let's give the award to the industry. Most companies are doing well, and they're doing to some degree perhaps equally well in many ways. But
it's honestly I understand why you hesitate in this, because all the operators that are releasing quarterly reports are all showing positive numbers at the moment. Kindred, Betsson, Leo Vegas, all of you guys. I mean, so I would say as well, is there anyone who stands out among those, like the listed companies? Not really. No, I think the operators seems to be doing really well in general, which is a great sign, because it feels like in 2019, it feels like the industry was a little bit on shaky grounds, and there was a little bit negativity in general around the industry, but it's really turning around now. I think as an industry, and it feels like the sky is the limit in many ways. Lots of opportunities, new markets, and companies are performing well.
It is, but I can. There's probably one that deserves a special mention. If you look at, we speak about valuations and so forth, and you mentioned DraftKings. But if you look at what is more European focused over here, is you have arguably Evolution Gaming is standing out, and that started before 2020, but they have kept that pace going. So and obviously the acquisition they did of Net Entertainment and Red Tiger by doing that, I think you have to say that they particularly have been standing out during the year though. So and that's easy for me to point out. It's not an operator, it's a supplier.
No, it's a supplier.
But you also look very highly valuated, and they are doing really well.
Yeah, and an interesting thing with Evolution Gaming. So I have a small amount of shares in Evolution, nothing major, but it's just interesting for me to follow that company. And interestingly enough, when the news broke the other week that there was AstraZeneca, they posted their results in the efficiency of the vaccine, that their vaccine was like 95% of the time it protects you from COVID, basically. The result of that, I don't know if you noticed, the stock market just went completely crazy. And Evolution Gaming's share fell 15% on that news, which I just found was very, very interesting. It tells a story. It is like how the shareholders sometimes they take very very strange decisions when they decide on what to invest in and what to divest in.
It's a lot of psychology.
A lot of psychology
in that as well, of course.
A lot of psychology. Yeah, I follow some of the stock market forums as well, and the decisions people take based on what share they buy and what they sell is interesting to read the arguments sometimes. But and then you would think, when the news broke the other day that Evolution's bid of NetEnt were approved by the shareholders now of NetEnt, and they got the okay from the regulator and so forth. It didn't even touch the share price.
But I still believe they are on solid levels.
And I think that's the point. They have been doing so well, in the last 12 months, in the last 24 months, the last 10 years. There's been exponential growth eventually. So they reached the ceiling now, right? From June or something like that. the share.
You know what, Pierre, in the sense of this, I think we just need to keep remembering that it is a growth industry we are in, and that growth will continue for many, many years.
Yes.
So in overall, I don't think we are, in this industry, and particularly if you look at industry index, I think we should be confident over that the future looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a closing thought, just to solidify that thought, the head of investment relations at Aspire Global, she estimated that their share price is undervalued by about 30%, considering how the profit looks like. Just because of what we talked about earlier in the podcast now, like hesitation by the investors and so forth. But she said as well, it's just a matter of time, before it's reflected better in the share price, considering how well the industry is doing now to protect its player in the end of the day.
But you always value that what you're trading at to some degree, and then
of course.
Then I mean, we can all think different ways of that, but I think without commenting on any companies, I think as an industry there is a lot of potential for future growth, and then also high valuations in the long run if the growth continues as it is doing now, and there's very few things that says that it wouldn't.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jesper, it's like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's for me, I was excited like a child yesterday during this podcast actually, and you're one of the people I look up to most in the industry. So I really appreciate that you take the time to come on today, and hopefully we can follow up soon and see where we were right and where we were wrong next time.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Really appreciate your very kind words, and it's been a pleasure to be here speaking to you today. So hope to come back at another point.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thank you.